Brilliant. Hello there, and thank you so much for joining Forging Ahead today. My name's Alex Lawrence, the Managing Director at TelcoForge, and I'll be your guide to the hour ahead. Now, TelcoForge was built from the fact that in many corners of the industry, you'll find people disgruntled about how things in the telecoms industry don't seem to be working quite the way they ought to. And with initiatives like Forging Ahead today, we're highlighting people that are doing things differently and who might be, you never know, the keys to making people gruntled again. But we're not just showing you, we're also introducing them to a panel of experts from different parts of the telecoms world to get their reactions, questions, and comments. So in terms of format, we have two leaders from exciting companies who meet the brief of this session, which is value creation for a new generation of customers. I'll give Roger Dewey, the CEO of Able Device, and Michael Carlson, the co-founder of Onomondo, some time to introduce themselves and what they're doing in under 10 minutes each. But the majority of the hour is for conversation and questions arising from what they say. And anyone who's experienced a media briefing will know that this is going to be anything but an easy ride for them. However, towards the end of that time, I'll try to gather those ideas and issues together into some concrete ideas and recommendations for the two companies. Now, those of you who are in the audience are welcome to pitch in with questions in the chat, and I'll pick those up as well. But we do have three thought leaders here with a wide range of expertise to add in. We have Teresa Cotton, the Chief Analyst at Omnisperience and a specialist in all things customer related. Pablo Jacopino, Director of Ecosystem Research at GSMA Intelligence, who keeps an eye on the changing dynamics of the industry. And Ellie Whitaker, a reporter for Rethink Research's Wireless Watch newsletter, which is a publication I've followed for years and balances technology and business very neatly. So you'll be hearing much more from them, I'm sure, over the course of the hour. I'd be quite keen to bring Roger in at this point and hand over to him because I think with a bit of luck we'll see some useful complementarities there. So yeah, over to you with that, Roger.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I apologize for the hiccup we just had. The second you launched live, everything here locked up. And I went into a panic, but luckily we're back. So thanks for your patience. So if you could bring up the slide deck and just go to the next slide off our nice title. I'll give you a little bit of background on what we do. So at Able Device, we do a SIM applet, but it's much more advanced and configurable, a lot different than anything you've seen before. And our background as a team, and we started this in the days of IoT because we started to understand that large enterprises or even, service providers like OnStar or whatever, they need to be able to manipulate their communications differently than what an operator would give them. They don't want to take what's just off the shelf and what everybody gets in the consumer business. And they're also moving across operators. Things are roaming in an international roaming environment, and they need to be able to understand it because they are responsible to their customers for the quality of service, right? They can't say, well, we're giving you this service, but the problem's really with a roaming partner of AT&T. People don't want to hear that. They want to be able to manage it because they're large, competent IT departments. And what's happened is we're seeing this more now, and nobody really realized that IoT is an enterprise play, not a telecom play, perhaps. But it really comes home when they started launching the mobile private networks, because now you see it carries on into handsets. And while the operators might not have been concerned enough with this to address it in IoT because of the low ARPU, they definitely want to keep those executives at those companies who are wandering in and out of buildings into the private networks, back out into the public networks. There's a lot of revenue involved in that. And again, a lot of these can be fixed with making changes to an applet on the SIM. You can get it to communicate the way you want it to go, but the SIM applets at this point really haven't been scalable. Everything is designed on a scale for millions and millions of units with an operator and a one size fits all. If you're big enough, such as let's say OnStar, we'll go back to that. Yeah, you can justify having an applet built for you because you have so many different cars and etc. You know, the ARPU might be higher, the overall value of the business. But if you're a little shop that's just got 500 or 1,000 trucks that are driving around, going back and forth from different facilities, it really hasn't been cost effective. And then people start trying to solve the problem with servers out of the cloud. And that starts to get very messy also. So it just wasn't scaling. So what we did with SIMbae is we built, you know, a super applet, an applet that has many, many different capabilities across a whole spectrum of functions. And it comes resident in SIMbae. Everybody gets the same version of SIMbae no matter what you're going to do with it. And then there's a way to configure it through what's called a configuration script. So you don't need to know how to program Java card. You just have to know the logic flow that you want it to follow. Okay. So it's much like I always tell people, think about Excel. When you have Excel, you want a spreadsheet, but you don't have to know how to code or program. It's got all the functions already in there, but it doesn't do anything until you write the formulas. And so my version of it, I might use it to follow NFL scores or, you know, football. And I'm programming it one way, and somebody else is tracking trucks around the world. They're writing formulas another way. But you don't need to be a programmer. You just got to know how to do the formulas. So we've done that in SIMbae, and it's a state machine. So unlike also if you get separate applets or you try to update them later or make two separate applets run together, you get into conflicts because they don't understand that there's something else trying to make a change off a similar state or the same state. And you get these collisions because all these capabilities are in the SIMbae state machine, and it's your logic flow. If this, then that. You avoid those conflicts and you can go forward over time. And it's very simple, all right? So you're not actually changing any of the Java card code as you're doing the configurations and the scripts. It's just taking the code that's already on there and assembling in the order that you want with that logic. So to be able to do that, the coding language that we used originally was based on Python because most engineers know how to script in Python. And it became very easy for us. And then we realized, well, we can actually make this a lot more simpler when we overlaid a node editor on top of the Python. So that gives you the ability to just drag and drop, literally draw a flow chart. And then that script gets sent only to the SIMs that you want. So if you've got thousands of SIMs out there, but you only want these 10 different devices to act a little different, you can change the script and send it the update just to those 10 SIM cards. And the update is less than 1K, those scripts and script changes. So you can even do it over an SMS, an encoded class 2 SMS, or you can mass deploy to every millions and millions of SIMs out there using an OTA server. Whatever works for you, we give you a lot of different options on how you're going to manage very small scale to very large scale. Also, because there's only one version of SIMbae, it increases the robustness because every time one of our customers finds an issue, and the issue is almost always in a bad SIM card, SIM toolkit deployment on a cellular radio, instead of having to go back and have different versions of SIMbae for different SIM toolkits and different modules, we just identify the condition and write a routine that when you see this condition, work around it. And it goes into SIMbae that everybody has. So now we've crowdsourced an improvement. And in the future, other customers won't even see that problem because we already overcome it. So we're just constantly improving and improving. And it allows the application developers just to concentrate on the value they add instead of this kind of stuff that we do in the background we're really good at. So if you progress the slide to the next one, I'd appreciate it. These are some of the areas. So this is just a sampling of the kinds of things we do. We break it up into larger buckets to make it easier to explain. So quality of service, we can do signal strength roaming based on thresholds. When you fall below a certain threshold, even though you're still connected to the network, it'll start to look for another network that's above the threshold that you're looking for, things like that. So as you're moving through space, you have the great quality of service. We check to make sure that data is working efficiently. And if not, you can put in a rule. If not, then change to another network under these conditions, that sort of thing. Give you the ability to recognize when you're adjacent or very close to a private network, even on a device that doesn't have GPS, because SIMbae is aware of what cell site it's in, and you just program in there that these public cell sites are adjacent to the private network. So it starts looking for it. And even though you have 5 bars on the public network, it'll switch to the private network and vice versa, coming back in and out. It's up to you how you want to program it. We also have security in there. We have a major electric vehicle OEM, global. You know who they are, but they're paranoid, and this is security. They use the eSIM that's in the vehicle as a standardized security check. We put the keys and certificates to access the maintenance port, the plugged in. We're not going through the mobile channel at that point. And it's a standardized security chip that you can update at any time in its future over standard SIM OTA. So it gives you a lot of power. Network efficiency, we can put the back off timers there so that the operators or the service provider doesn't have to worry about how that was programmed in the firmware by the guy who programmed the device. They can overtake that by manipulating just some stuff on our SIM applet. And tools and diagnostics gives you the ability, if something's going on in the field and you don't know understand what's happening, gives you the ability to connect to the cellular radio and look at the entire communication stack, or go so far as to start to control the machine. If you actually had architected the machine with SIMbae in mind, we can reach out, we can reset the entire machine, we can check different IOs, things like that. And this is all the same SIM applet, and it's all standard compliant. There's no servers in the background. We don't do any intelligence in the cloud. It's all done on the SIM. So that's, if you progress to the next slide, it's just kind of announcing that we have the demonstration coming up. I don't know if you want to play the launch a demo video now, or what order you would like to do it in, but thank God, with the technical problems I am having today, we sent you a video just in case.
This demo showcases how SIMbae removes the complexity of SIM development, allowing anyone to create, configure, and deploy custom applet logic at scale without writing a single line of Java card code. Hello and welcome, everyone. We start by showing the node editor on the left, and on the right, you can see the mobile phone mirrored to the computer. This phone has a SIM with SIMbae installed. It's connected to the network. Now I'll show you the SIM Toolkit menu. SIMbae is installed here. For our demo, you'll see the user menu is currently not doing anything at the moment. In this session, we're going to show how to create a script with the node editor, how to edit it, and how to upload it to SIMbae. Let's get started. The first script we will demonstrate is a very simple one. When the user menu is launched, we want to show a single Hello SIMbae message on the mobile phone screen. Scripts consist of events and actions, and in this example, we can see a single event, which is user menu launched, connected to a write custom message action, set to show Hello SIMbae on the mobile equipment. I can easily drag and drop the script where I want it. As you can see, the user menu is not doing anything when I click it. After I click upload, you will see that this script is compiled first to a Python format. The Python script is converted to binary format. The binary script then is uploaded to SIMbae using a TCP connection. As I click user menu now, you can see it's already writing Hello SIMbae. I'll now demonstrate how easily we can make another change. I'm going to change this message to Welcome to SIMbae. I'm going to click upload. After I click OK, I will now go to the script upload screen. This script basically has one user launched event and one action associated with it, which is Welcome to SIMbae. The new script is already sent successfully and installed seamlessly on SIMbae. As I click on the user menu, you can see it now shows Welcome to SIMbae displayed instead of Hello SIMbae. It is now time to show you a more complex example. This time, we want to instruct SIMbae to send network information data periodically. We call this our Find It use case. Using the node editor, I am now scrolling down to find the timer. This timer box has 30 seconds and 0 jitter. I'm going to need the timer events, so I'm going to need to know when the timer is expired. But we also need to start this timer, so I'm going to start this timer right when the script is already loaded. I'm also going to need to connect to the timer expired to the timer start, so that this is a recurring timer. Otherwise, it would be just a one-shot timer. Next, I can also link other actions to this time expired event. I'm going to scroll down to network information related actions. First, I'm going to grab the network information actions box. I'm going to update the access technology, a prerequisite to obtaining network measurement results from the device. I'm also updating the NMR, allowing SIMbae to update the perceived signal strength and other metrics. And finally, I'm going to need to send this information back to a server. So I will now enable the function of sending the location and the NMR data. This basically is our find it use case, easily configured using SIMbae. After I click upload again, this whole new logic will be loaded into SIMbae. As you can see, it is a much more complicated script. For an easier view, I also will show this to you in VS Code window. This is the same script, but formatted in a way that is much easier to digest. We can see there are two event and action pairs here. First event is when the timer number 1 is expired. We see update access technology. We see updated NMR. And we see a lot of variables sent here, like MCC, MNC location area code, the signal strength, signal quality, and so on. We can see another pack here, so when the timer is expired, or when the script is loaded, we restart the timer with 30 seconds duration. If I go back now, we can already see the location, and NMR data is being sent here, so this location, NMR, as seen in the script, is visible. There's a couple of metrics here, and if I go to this other screen, we can see that the signal strength is indeed updated. We can see the live data coming from our script visualized here. If I go to this other application called NetMonster, which is basically an Android native application, we can validate that the RSRP value displayed there is the same as the RSRP value perceived by SIMbae. This concludes the demonstration. As you can see, it's very easy to just chain together custom logic and change how SIMbae behaves entirely using the node editor. SIMbae allows anyone to create.
Yeah, I think that was it. So thank you very much, and take questions whenever Alex thinks it's appropriate, I guess.
Thank you. Yes, at this point, I'm going to turn things over to the panel for their responses and their questions to Michael, to Roger, or both. I have a few questions up my sleeve, and I'll chime in as well with any audience questions or comments that come through. But I think what I'd like to do is just start off by getting some initial impressions from our analysts and journalists here. So, Teresa, what did you make of what you heard?
Well, it's nice to let's start with the good stuff. It's really interesting to meet people who are trying to do something different, and I appreciated both your presentations because you're trying to solve a problem and help everybody achieve their aims better, which is great. I think I understand technically now how your solutions work, but I'd like to have heard a lot more about the customer. So if we start at the last presentation, for example, if I'm in an enterprise and I want to do this stuff, then I've got problems I need to solve for my end users. And that didn't really come through to me what those problems really were strongly enough. You kind of said it in a dismissive almost way and then got into the how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to realize that they're trying to solve, they have their internal customers effectively. There's two customers here. Your customer who's in the IT department and wants to solve an issue. And, I could hear from what you were saying, we make it easier for you to do this stuff that you need to do to help your end users. Great, but I needed that to be more explicit. That's one kind of customer. The other one are the end users, and they have to manage the EX of their end users. It's essential now. And so, what do the end users want? How does this improve things for them? What can they see? I wanted to see both sides really and have that a bit more explicit. And then, if you start with the business problem and said they want to do all these things, but it's really hard at the moment to do that for these reasons, and we make it easier because you then have a logic through into your demo. I think that's a bit more stronger. So I'm all about the customer. So I'd always start with the customer, and what does the customer really need. I think the first demo, the first presentation rather. Again, wrote down things about the customer side. We've seen a lot from IoT, and it's been so overblown over the last 20 years. It's going to save the industry and make us trillions of dollars, and it clearly didn't. And when I looked into the details of, it's sort of to the side of what I do, but I monitor it, and a lot of it's been to do with scale, and you talk very eloquently about the kind of problems that this side of the industry faces in actually making the business work. We know there's demand there potentially. It's just how do you release that demand? But when I looked at your side, you talked a lot about very large enterprises, and I know that that's kind of the low-hanging fruit that everybody wants to go for. But this side of the industry only really gets like the wheels under it when anybody can start to connect things and use IoT. And there's a massive demand in the mid-market and the SME side, that I've always felt has not really been addressed at all. It's always been addressed at these really super large enterprises. And that's difficult enough to get it to work for them. But, there's a big part of the market that we still seem to be missing, I think. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about the customers and how you saw that. I saw things working for them, and how where the money side's going to come from as well, because it is tiny little bits of ARPU, and we're not talking about massive amounts of data that's being carried typically. So money for you, money for the carriers. I'd like to have dug into a little bit more about how you see that it's going from a financial side, because there's lots of people that have launched as IoT carriers and they failed because they just couldn't make those sums add up. So I just wanted to see a little bit about that and why you think you're going to be different. And I can see from the technical point of view, you've really thought about it and how to do it. But from the business side and the customer side, I'd like to have heard a bit more. I think that's my initial feedback anyway.
Wow. Well, I mean, there's plenty to get into there, and I am going to give Michael and Roger the chance to come back on that. But as you were talking there, I got the sense that Ellie had some thoughts as well. So I just want to sort of hand over to you before we dive into that, in case there's anything that
yeah, that's useful actually, because I share a lot of her views, and I think what I would add, we don't want to give them a deluge of things to answer in one go, but I think from my angle, not just, let's identify the consumer and have a really clear idea of who that consumer is, and thus give us a clear idea of the business focus here. But I think the one thing I was really interested in while I heard these discussions was the security implications of both of these products. Partly, I think for the SIM applet, I'd want to know more about how it works, and on that basis, kind of get an idea of what the security concerns are. But I think when we talk about SIM IoT, it just exposes a huge layer of cybersecurity issues. So I think in any response, when we're talking about points of access to the network that extend it in the IoT world, extend it, by thousands, hundreds of thousands of points, I want to know first and foremost how anybody selling into this market kind of protects their product and how they value cybersecurity in the industry. I think that's what I'd add to Teresa's, not to overwhelm for now, but I think that's what I'll add for now.
Can I just add one more thing, just because I am overwhelming you? I really like that idea about the private network scenario that you talked about, where you said, IoT is an enterprise play, I'm quoting now, but there's the private network aspect, and that's where it starts to get really interesting. I love that idea, but you didn't elaborate enough on it. And I think that's a very powerful idea potentially, because I've just written a book about telecoms customers, available from all your good Amazons very soon. And one of the key things I say in that is this idea that, when we're selling to enterprise, into the enterprise market, we're not just selling to the IT department anymore. We're selling to everybody within the enterprise, because that executive sat at home who can't get connectivity for this sort of webinar sort of scenario, or a salesman that's roaming around somewhere and can't get his connectivity, they're going to, no matter how happy the IT departments are with you, and you've got a great relationship with them, they're going to come back and demand that you change carrier because, they're having a really bad time of it. So, we need that visibility all the way through the chain. We need to see how everybody's actually experiencing the network. And I thought that was a really interesting idea that you threw in there about the private networks. So I'd like to hear a bit more about that as well.
Well, I mean, there's plenty there to get your teeth in. I mean, Pablo, if you can hang on, I'd like to give Michael and Roger the chance to respond first, just because there is quite a lot here, both in terms of the security and in those sort of customer angles. So, I mean, Roger, perhaps you can comment first as to some of these points.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely valid what you're saying about the customer experience, and we really try to, in our marketing, to focus on that, because if you look at the demo I gave, if you don't come from telecom, most people are like, what did you just say? I mean, that's crazy. So that's why we try to explain it. Well, this is what it does. And our marketing generally on our websites, and I actually included a brochure for TelcoForge to share with you. There's whole sections on there on user success stories. And we have a whole separate brochure that's just like 14 pages of the great stuff our customers do. Because again, that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where the value is. And it makes it easier for me to explain the technology that you just saw. All right, because if I explain just the technology without the benefit of what it means to somebody, it's just completely useless. So, with the time that was available, this is the way we kind of did it. But for example, our largest and oldest customer is, believe it or not, a company that does over-the-top credit card transactions over the top of the network for taxi cabs and restaurants with mobile credit card readers as they're walking around a restaurant. It's happened to all of us. They swipe the card in front of the hotel in the taxi cab. There's no connectivity. Now you have to give me money. Well, I just landed in this country. I don't have the right currency. Here, what he uses it for is he's moving. The taxi cabs are moving through space. They are monitoring constantly the signal strength. And even though the signal strength is high enough that the device isn't going to be looking for a new network, it's not high enough that the scan's going to go through cleanly. So he sets the thresholds, and he can set them in different countries. And he can say, in this local area code or in this cell site, act this way. It gives you the power to really micromanage the logic on the flow. And the customers go buy their own credit card readers. He doesn't even know what they have. And that's where the whole concept of putting fixes to the SIM toolkits there. So he just ships them a new SIM card, and it's with a tier 1 operator, and it's a global roaming SIM company you know very well. Millions and millions of them have our technology on it. And he ships it to them and just tells them, put this in your credit card reader now. So as it's moving through space, whether it's in a restaurant or whatever, it's actually managing to make sure you have the right tolerance, the right signal level, but then also checking data to make sure it can ping a server, make sure that data throughput is working there. If everything doesn't work, it goes back through the scan and actually starts looking for it. So this is, pennies that we charge this guy, and he ships them all over the world because it's millions, because to us, it's just software. There's no hardware involved or anything like that, right? And with the private networks, that was actually brought to us as a project. We were IoT guys until 3 years ago. Now we understand what we really are. We're enterprise guys. That's why I said that way. And what they had the problem with is the operator wants to sell, again, a global roaming SIM, right? Because they want all the trucks and all the executives to use it as they're moving in and out of, let's say, different private networks around the world. Think, DHL, the shipper. Every airport's got DHL. They got offices, different places. They get private networks in all those buildings that they want to control. But when you're outside of the footprint, you're going to be on the public network. So they said, okay, we want to sell them our roaming portfolio from when they're out. But there's this problem. How does it know to switch to the private network when you're going in the building because you got 5 bars on the public network? And we came up with a way saying, hey, there might not even be GPS on a device, but we give you the ability to use that little button that we have. You put the SIMbae on a SIM and put it on the phone, and you use the app that was actually in the demo, and you walk the perimeter of your facility, and it maps the towers that are there. And then you make that part of the script so that when it detects that I'm in this public tower, this public cell site, I know the private network's right there. So I have 5 bars, start looking for it and make the switch. Now, there's other people who do it different ways, right? The server's in the back end that has the mapping, maybe 10 minutes because there's this latency. You have to go back and forth. It has to make a decision. This is all being done on the SIM itself in real time. 3 seconds, longest we've seen it take. It takes like a half a second. We did a demo at Mobile World Congress last year, and it was so fast you could almost see it on the screen on the Jumbotron. I talked a little bit before about the security aspects of it, that it is a secure element. The SIM is a secure element, and they're actually putting other credentials other than the network profiles and things like that. They're putting the key stores and certificates on the eSIM to manage connectivity to update the, let's say, braking subsystem in that vehicle when you plug it into the maintenance port. And it's because your SIMs are being updated all the time and you don't know it, right? Just there's a SIM OTA out there. The operators are changing preferred roaming lists in the background. They're changing your services and things like that. You never see it, right? Like you pointed out, it's actually a network element, but it's where the network connects to the device. It bonds right there. So it's a little piece of real estate that the device can have influence over, but it can also influence the device when you use our technology. But it's very secure. The only way to access that SIM is if you have the right KIs, the KIC, KID, which are the algorithms that let you into just that spot on that SIM. The rest of the SIM is protected. We don't actually interact with the things that concern the operators. We run as a separate bucket there, or separate control, and we're just manipulating files and commands through the SIM toolkit to manipulate the device and the cellular radio. So hopefully that kind of give you a flavor for what we do. And yeah, we particularly now, we used to sell directly to operators and try to get them to push it at their customers. And we found that our biggest success is to sell it to the customer and have them pull it through the operator, because the operator doesn't know what their pain points are, nor do they really care. But when we sit down and they say, well, we've already deployed this for this other giant company out there, and it's just doing great. And we don't even know what they're doing really, but we're making money and it doesn't mess up our network. And we take it to a new customer who pulls it through. And this is the way it's building. The case we're making is directly to the enterprise, because the operators, particularly in IoT, they give it a lot of lip service. They make fancy TV commercials about firemen and stuff. But, they don't. So it's just not a far point. It's a big hassle for them. Yep. So we're giving the control and the power over to the enterprise, and enterprise can pay us, or the operator can pay us. I don't care.
Cool. Thanks, Roger. And Michael, you've been very patient through some of these, some of this conversation, but a lot of this also applies to you as well in terms of although in a very different way. So perhaps you can sort of address some of these questions around that business side and the security piece.
Yeah, I can certainly try. So I think one of the original questions there was around sort of, you can say, the bigger logos versus the mid-market, attractiveness, application value, and scale. It also related to how the operators have succeeded or only partially failed, or only partially succeeded, I should say, in sort of unlocking the value of the promise of IoT in a way. I think our approach to this has been one of, so I should start by saying that, you know, I know that I highlighted a lot of well-known larger scale logos, at least for some of them. The reality of it is that some of the biggest successes and the highest application value and sort of you can say usage of some of the uniqueness of our tool stack that sits in the network comes from the mid-market, because what typically sits with that customer group is that they're a pretty IoT singular focused kind of business. They're pretty scale oriented, high urgency, high knowledge or depth of knowledge into our space and also what we represent. And they have a high articulation of the, you can say, the problem set between the integration elements of hardware to connectivity to cloud and so on, and how that responsibility set can be distributed better. And now that you can say the industry also has some of the scar tissue to have learned that lesson, then you can say the winds is in our backs on that agenda. What so in terms of how value is unlocked, also for the industry as a whole, I think you can say where many operators, specific IoT or not, have sort of failed or again only partially succeeded in this endeavor has been around unlocking value. It's been sort of a race to the bottom. And you can say there's a lot of infrastructure out there that's been paid for by the phones in our pockets and stuff like that. So there's also a long way to the actual bottom. But I think, and what we're trying to sort of propel forward here is a different perspective on how to embed more value into the role of the network. And I think that's super critical to make devices more efficient, more long-lasting, and more secure in reality. I think the dilemma of building devices that are supposed to last for 5, 10, 15 years in the field, where you want them to be stable, you want them to be secure, and you also want them to be cheap when you design them, and you want them to connect to some kind of cloud in 15 years that you don't know what is. If you look 15 years back, you'll find that a lot of things have changed since then, and that's basically what you're asking your engineers to design for. If you poorly put the responsibility of the security and the management of this on the device, and we like to think that things can be a little bit more efficient that way, and also more flexible long term. And that's also why we ventured into SIMIoT. I think that's a brilliant example of a standard that, when applied right and without barriers, can serve a huge impact for the better on our industry. It's why we ventured into SoftSIM around efficiency and battery efficiency and data efficiency. We build technology we call connectors, which is around making sure that the cloud and the device is connected but separate in architecture, and with efficiency and security gains to gain from that. And really, what we're trying to propose here is to take a bigger responsibility of all of these different agendas that sit in the journey of an IoT solution, without sort of hackling our way to the bottom on our own behalf, on the partners that we link up with. So that's sort of the application or the approach we've taken. That has also given us a bunch of sort of islands of technology that sort of connects more to the sentence of making any device talk through any network to any cloud, which sits outside the box of a typical MVNO or an operator. And one example of that is actually private networks. So just to touch on that a bit, no, the question wasn't for me, but I think what our approach to that is one that, for certain IoT solutions, enterprise for sure, but also certain mid-markets, there's a lot of these situations where devices, foreign or domestic, will come and go into either remote areas or secure areas, or some kind of controlled environment where private networks can play a role. And you can say our mantra is really to take the logic to some degree. I do agree that in some use cases, applets and other technologies on the device can play a role. But in other situations, simplicity also plays a role, and where you can govern some of these logic elements into the network. And so we built together with Maersk, the global shipping operator, the largest global private wireless network today that sits on every vessel and connects all the assets on these vessels, whether they come, come to the vessel and sit on a private network, they go and land, they sit on a terrestrial public network, and they roam back and forth seamlessly. And so that's another sort of logic. I'll shut up now, but sorry.
Thanks very much, Michael. And I'm aware that Pablo's been incredibly patient here, waiting his turn. But I'd love to get a sense from you as to, well, either if you have any sort of particularly pressing questions for Michael and Roger, but also, to get a sense from you as to how you see these innovations fitting into the wider telecoms landscape, because people tend to think of it as being something very much about national scale players with their own networks, and we've seen some very, very different solutions presented here.
Sure, absolutely. So I will start with some of the most important insights from our enterprise survey. Cost of implementation is the top challenge for enterprises deploying IoT technology. So it's really good to see that both solutions have an objective of making implementation of IoT technologies less expensive or more efficient. And this is good news because obviously we know that IoT is a very promising market. We're talking about billions of devices. ARPU is very low. But still, we're talking about an ecosystem of $1 trillion. So there is an opportunity out there, and obviously helping enterprise is super important. I have a couple of questions, one for Michael, one for Roger. For Michael, the question is, for your IoT solution, what is that AI bring to the table? How can AI help with your IoT solution? Hopefully, a growing percentage of IoT devices will use eSIM technology instead of the removable SIM. Is your SIMbae solution fit for purpose, suitable for eSIM technology? So these are two questions for Michael and Roger.
Great, thanks. Well, and I'll hand over to Michael first on this, but I do want to be aware that time is pressing, so maybe we can keep it relatively brief as an answer.
Yes, for sure. I don't know if you could just briefly repeat the question.
So the question is, the question is, what is that AI can bring to the table? Right. How is AI helping with your IoT solution?
Yeah, in very short, I think AI is an impressive suite of technologies, right? And you can apply it and see it applied or experimented with in many different ways. I think you can sort of say from our perspective, the approach we've taken is that sometimes there's a case for device side logic that will either compress the decision algorithm on the device so that it becomes faster, or it will compress the data stream by applying some kind of logic to it on the way. What we tend to do as a network, and our role to play in that, is to make sure that you can say the layer around the data of the data. So how the network is operating, what is happening, the quality of signals, the needle in a haystack problem of debugging, and so on and so forth, is aided by this technology. There's a huge pattern recognition issue within a large fleet of devices with a large stack of data, and AI has a role to play in that. And that's the approach we're taking personally as a company towards our customers. We're also, of course, helping them evaluate where another pieces of other places in the solution that AI can play a role. But that's the approach we're taking so far towards customers.
Fantastic, thanks. And
the question to me, yeah, the eSIM was the best thing that ever happened to us. I couldn't wait till it happened. And it's really because, in the early days, we were doing this. The first thing we ever did, we did on a 64K SIM. We had 14K available. Right now, I've got 2 meg. I got more space than I wanted to do with, and we're used to being in resource-constrained environments. It also, a couple other things. It opened up people's minds. Until then, people were like, a SIM? What are you talking about, a SIM? Now eSIM has got enterprises and people who build machines thinking about SIM technology. And they're seeing that, hey, we can over the air change this and update it. It's not a static piece of plastic that I got to go pop the top of the box and send somebody on a truck roll. It's become a super powerful tool, and it's secure, and it enabled us. It shortened our supply chain. It opened up the minds of the end users who didn't even know this was available, who never in a million years would think about doing this on a SIM. So now when I walk in the door, they already know what an eSIM is. And in some cases, I don't even talk to the operator. And in the old days, I had to. They controlled the SIM and they gave it to the customers. A lot of these larger customers are buying their own eSIMs and putting flow soldering on the board when it's being built, and they own it now. And they're going to tell the operator what goes on it. The operator's not telling them. So this is my version of the world. I mean, more, please. Thank you.
So, Roger, this is really good. I have a follow-up comment which doesn't need an answer. So feedback, when I talk with customers, the feedback is consumer eSIM, there has been a major catalyst unlocking scale. Apple going eSIM only, initially in the US and then now in 12 countries. Everyone is waiting for something big in terms of power and scale for the IoT market. So we as an industry, we need to think about something that could have the same powerful effect that Apple had on consumer eSIM. It doesn't need an answer. It's more, working together to find
those large operators who would for years try to keep us off. We're now back in there, and you'll see a lot of announcements with some monsters because they know I can add value to my enterprise customer by giving them this capability, right? And it doesn't tax me. I don't have to do anything special. I'm giving them the capability. So it's actually, like I said, this has been great for us.
Fantastic, thanks. And we have a couple of minutes to go. So I'd like to invite our panelists as well to provide any sort of advice or feedback based on the conversation so far that we've seen. Ellie, perhaps we can start with you in terms of what do you think is next, or where do you think you'd like to sort of see these companies in a few years' time?
I think going back to the point of the customer, it would be seeing how aware the customer is of this product. As we've just heard, just saying that the eSIM change is going to be a huge change for you. Well, eSIM is, so new in the sort of global awareness that it's kind of only really starting to become a big product possibility. So I think understanding how not only the large enterprise, but these small and medium companies become aware of these possibilities that you mentioned. And like you say, selling it to Maersk and the big ones, great, and DHL, great. But if we're looking at making this a more mass market, making those customers aware of what's available and teaching them, I guess, and it's you guys will tell us, I'm sure, in the future, but teaching them about what's possible.
Yep.
That's a really interesting comment about sort of teaching the customer. I'm going to turn to you for a last comment as well, Teresa. Sort of, although I'm aware we're going to have to be quite quick.
I think it's about unlocking the black box. Like telecoms has always been this black box. And when we can give people the tools to actually sit on top of our network and to solve their own problems and give them the freedom to do that. We unlock so much creativity and potentially revenue. So I think, it's great to see a way of unlocking the box. That unfortunately, the issue is, as always, getting the carriers to understand that there is revenue. I mean, they're desperate for revenue. There is revenue, but they need to be able to unlock their networks and their capabilities so that people can actually solve their own problems. You can't, as a network operator, solve everything for the end user. You have to give the end user the tools so that they can, solve their own problems. And that's where the real money, I think, starts to come from. They find problems that we didn't even know that they have, and they can solve these things and just give us some money for our connectivity, and that's absolutely brilliant. So I think understanding that value stack, I think, is the key for both companies. And the pitch to the customer: who really is the customer, who are the influencers, and how do I actually convince them that this is something that that they should be doing. So going back to what Ellie just said, it's about that, showing the benefits and speaking the speak of the person that's actually going to influence the sale, I think, as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Teresa. And with that, I think we're pretty much up to time. But if you're watching this and you have questions, or you want to follow up with any of the speakers that you've seen today, please do drop us a line. You can reach me at alex.lawrence@telcoforge.com, and I'll help you any way I can. Tomorrow we'll be back with some new speakers and panelists investigating the worlds of private networks and infrastructure after Build It and They Will Come. So please do join us then. For now, though, I'd like to thank Roger, Michael, Ellie, Teresa, and Pablo for their time. I'd like to thank you for your attention. And until next time, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.